Good evening. Welcome to Urban Facts. It is Thursday, 7 o'clock. I'm your host, Eamon Hotep Parker. Today, my co host has the day off, so you just got me. So, what we will be talking about today, and I'm also going to give a shout out to some of the individuals that have been, sponsoring us here. So we'll be talking about where's the thing here? How to develop the black child. So here we go right there. So that's our topic for discussion. How to the development of the black child. So before we go into that, I just want to give a shout out to some of the people that have contributed to our foundation, all the individuals that have given money, throughout the years of our existence and are working towards our vision of, developing inner city communities culturally and academically with a special emphasis on youth so that they can see opportunities that's afforded to them so that a positive future can come to fruition. So we want to thank Telly's Glam. We want to thank Pastor Ulysses Pratt and his church, Victory Christian Center, for their donations. We definitely want to thank all the other people that I may have forgotten to mention during this episode here. Oh, so also we want to send our prayers and our condolences to the Trump family in regards to that horrific event at his rally, where he was a victim of he was a victim of an attempted assassination. So we definitely want to send our prayers and condolences to his family. So let's get started. So when we talk about development, we really have to get an understanding of what that is exactly. So let's take a look here. So to understand development, let's look at the definition. So caregivers should pay attention to their child's distinct traits and the pace of their development and not assume that the approach to parenting that worked for their mothers or fathers will be equally successful in their own families. Parents and the home environments they create can also have important influence on a child's development. In fact, a child's home environment can affect the ways that certain generic traits express themselves, if they will at all. Excuse me. So depending on, thank you, Mr. Poindexter, I appreciate that. Depending on your child's environment, that could affect the child's development. So the parenting in situations like that will definitely be very important, because you don't want the environment of the child to be, affected in the child's development. So now that we understand development, we're going to go into what actually develop is. So we're going to look at develop here. I'm sorry. So here it is right here. That's not it. All right, so develop. Here's develop. So develop. To grow or cause to grow and become more mature, advanced, or elaborate. So this is very important when you developing, your child. Now this is from birth. So you can't skip any of these steps. You can't wait until the child becomes a teenager or when they start talking. Development happens as soon as the baby is out of the womb. Excuse me. So let's look at this definition one more time here. So develop, grow, or cause to grow. So when you causing something to grow, you have to be doing something for that growth to take place. Like you have to add nourishment. Like if you have a plant, you have to feed it, you have to give it sunlight, you have to water it for the plant to grow and develop. If you're not doing that, then the plant won't grow at all, and more likely it's going to perish. So, same is true for a child. If you don't give the child the proper nutrients and nurture, then its future may not look so promising. So let's go into the other thing here. Maybe get the bigger screen here. Let me just put this here. All right. Excuse me. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the parent-child relationship. So let's get into that part there. So the parent-child relationship. Quality for children's social, emotional, cognitive, neurobiological, and health outcomes has contributed to a shift in effects to identity, rational determinants of the child's outcome. So your relationship with your child is very key. You have to have a good relationship with your child in the process of development. If you do not have that, then the development of the child could be at risk. So I'm not saying that if you don't have a good relationship with the child at all, then your child is will succumb to bad behavior. It's just excuse me, it's a higher probability. I'm sorry, I got bad sinuses. So let's look at this relationship thing. So in the process of development, your child has to feel as though that it can come to you for anything. And you want that to be true. Like as far as talking, coming to you for advice, saying I'm hungry, help with schoolwork, whatever. Your role in this relationship is critical, and you have to be a parent in this relationship. So you can't stoop to the child's level and give your child the marker of best friend or even friend, because that doesn't happen like that. Now I understand, sometimes how that plays out, because you may have had a bad relationship with your parent. So you don't want to let the consequences or the excuse me. Hold on, I'm trying to look for something here. Let me see something here. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is, right. So you don't want the your previous relationship with your parents, if it was bad, to influence you to make mistakes. So that's why this part right here is so important when it says, let's find that here. Um, Let me see here. I guess it's right from the beginning. So caregivers should pay attention to their child's distinct traits and the pace of their child's development and not assume that the approach to parenting that worked for for your mom and dad is going to be the same for for the child also. And we got a comment here. So Miss I don't want to mess this person's name up. I'm gonna just say Miss Janet. The grandparents relationship is important too. So that is absolutely correct. The grandparents relationship is important. Why is the grandparents relationship important? Because the relationship between the grandparent and the parent is giving that child a lesson of how he or she should interact with that parent. Um, if the grandparent has a bad relationship with their child, which would 9 times out of 10 is which is your child. Let me rephrase this. So if your parent, I'm talking to the parents now, has a bad relationship with you, then that could affect the relationship with your child. So this isn't just going for this is for any child parent relationship. You know what I mean? So that's why it says the development. So the development we're talking about from infancy to young adulthood. So let's go to the next thing. So before we get into all that, actually had some information here that I wanted to share. I'm sorry. Darn sinuses is kicking my behind. All right, so hold on 1 second. I'm trying to get to this thing here. All right, so here. All right, here we go. All right, so here we go. So, a 16-year-old runaway named Catherine Maddox gave birth to a baby boy on November 12th, 1934, in a Cincinnati, Ohio hospital. The child's father, Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr., was an Army man stationed nearby. When Kathleen, told him she was pregnant, Scott fled the area, never to return again. Therefore, it was more than likely that the child was never to meet his real father. The child's stepfather was a heavy drinker and would be missing for days at a time. The child's mother and stepfather would divorce just 3 years later in 1937. Excuse me. This was the stepfather was the mom's childhood sweetheart, Kathleen's childhood sweetheart. So as Kathleen struggled with her own alcoholic tendencies, she too would go missing for days at a time. She'd leave her child to a friend to fend for him or herself with a variety of babysitters while she was bar hopping and hanging around various men, and getting in trouble. Kathleen was involved in a robbery in 1939, and the courts gave her a 10-year prison sentence Her son went to live with his aunt and uncle in West Virginia until his mother was paroled in 1942. They reunited, and Kathleen continued her abusive parenting habits, but by this time, her son was becoming his own problem, getting arrested, finding trouble around every corner. His mother sent him to Gilbert School for Boys in Terre Haute, Indiana. Excuse me. Gilbert was a school for juvenile delinquents and was run by Catholic priests. Hold on. Kathleen's son fled Gilbert twice, the first time returning to his mother, who only sent him back. Later, he fled again, this time to Indianapolis, where he rented a room and supported himself by burglarizing stores at night. He was eventually caught, and a sympathetic judge sent him to Boys Town, another juvenile delinquent school in Omaha, Nebraska. For 4 days, he and another child inmate stole a vehicle, drove to Illinois. After the police caught him for more robberies, the court sent him to the Indiana boys' school. Yet another school for juvenile delinquents, where her son says he was beaten and raped. After 2 failed attempts to escape in 1951, Kathleen's son, let me get myself back on here, was no other than Charles Manson. Kathleen's son was no other than Charles Manson. That's Charles Manson right there. Am I trying to shame Kathleen or her son? No. What I'm trying to show you is that poor parenting can have very bad consequences. The sad thing about Kathleen's story is that it's very familiar today. So I was supposed to start the show off with that story, so I didn't want to leave it up. So let's go on to our next point. So, the parents' affection. So as you can see, Kathleen didn't have a lot of affection with her child. She got involved with a man that was in the military. He obviously wasn't interested in being a parent, because once she told him he was pregnant, he left the scene. Then she started having problems with a childhood sweetheart who wound up being an alcoholic, and then she wound up being an alcoholic, and being missing from the child's life, presence for days. So her affection wasn't there. So this is how a parent's affection, that should say, can affect a child. Warmth and affection expressed by parents to their children results in lifelong positive outcomes for the children. So as you can see, Charles wasn't receiving that. Charles did not receive the affection that he needed to have any type of positive outcome for his children. If you are familiar with Charles Manson, he actually developed a cult, the Manson family, where he had these very sick and diverse ways, horrible ways about family values and how women and children should be treated. So let's go to our next point here. So here's our next point. Teaching respect. Showing a child respect helps them grow into respectful individuals and can teach them to become people who think and act with positivity. And and teach children that their opinions are valid. Their emotions deserve attention, and by valuing their ideas, you open up possibilities for them rather than restricting their imagination. Another thing you do is prevent your child from seeking the attention of their peers. So you don't want that, because their peers could be going through the same issues that your child is going through. So you don't want to really do that. The purpose of this podcast is to help individuals that's struggling in this area in regards to child development. We have way too many black children. And just because it says the development of a black child, I purposely named it that because it's the black child that's the one that's in trouble the most in the inner city. That's the one you see on TV. It's the one you see going to jail. That's the one you see doing bad in school. I mean, I'm not saying it don't happen to white kids or Hispanic kids or Chinese kids, but so far our kids are leading the way in that area. Am I proud of that? No. Am I trying to make fun of our children? No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is provide a gateway for parents to, get their children out of harm's way in society. Because society really doesn't care about our children. And if you don't know how to parent, society will take your child. So let me say that again. Society, the streets. Let me walk that back. The inner city streets will take your child either by prison or by death if you do not know how to perform parenting. So this is critical. Now if you're watching this, I don't know who's watching this. I just know the people that commented. I don't know if they still watching, and I'm not trying to offend nobody. But here's the thing. The time for offenses needs to be passed because these kids can't afford it. Now, if this was me and my kids was out there, running amok, then I would definitely want somebody to talk to me. Matter of fact, somebody did talk to me before they could run amok. So we got to set aside our own feelings. And hey, I'm a good parent. Who are you to try to tell? I don't know if you're a good parent or not. This is just a podcast. This is for people that want to become good parents or better parents. So I'm not trying to say you're a bad parent at all. I'm not saying that. So, all right. So, on top of, the teaching your child respect, showing affection, this is a very important part right here. You have to set consequences. Now, before we get into that, let's look at what a consequence is. Hold on. I'm getting kind of lost. All right, here it is. Consequence, a result or effect of an action or condition. So let's do some examples. If I drop my phone right here, if I'm outside, if I drop this phone, phone, like if I'm just doing this, I'm scared to do it now. So if I'm doing this, the phone drop. The consequence is the screen will crack. You understand what I'm saying to you? So if I'm flipping it, real high and I'm outside and I fail to catch it, the consequence is I could break the phone. Here's a positive consequence to this type of action. If I put one of those, what's the name of them cases? It's a full case, so it covers like the whole phone. I forget the name of it. So if I do it with that case on there and it drops, is a more likelihood that the phone won't break because of the consequence, the action that I took to protect the phone is now going to come into play. Now, if I didn't do that to protect the phone, then it's going to break. So let's go to the consequences. I don't know why I keep doing this here. All right, so here we go. Your child is more likely, certain consequences. So your child is more likely to repeat behavior when you use positive consequences. So what's a positive consequence? So if your child gets an A on a test and you give them money, it's a likelihood that the child will repeat that behavior. If your child washes the family dog or takes the dog for a walk and you reward the child for that, it's more than likely that the child will do that again because you reward the child. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you got to reward your child for everything they do, because some things is just their duty in the household, or just as a child, going to school, eating their dinner, things like that. Now it doesn't always have to be monetary or some type of physical gift. You can just like compliment them, like, hey, you wash Snoopy so great when you wash the dog or whatever like that. I'm really proud of you or whatever. So now the negative consequences. Your child is less likely to repeat the behavior when you use negative consequences. Now, negative consequences is also called discipline. This is really important. If in the process of your child's development, you do not use negative consequences or discipline for inappropriate behavior, then let's go back to what it says. Your child is less likely to repeat that behavior when you use negative consequences. Now, when the child does bad behavior and you don't set a consequence, they're going to do it again. You want to know why? Because now they're confused. And you might say, they ain't confused, they just bad. No, that's not what that is. Let me walk that back. That could be what that is. The percentage is small. And being as though you're not correcting it, you're giving this child the assumption that the behavior that they're doing is correct, because you're not setting a negative consequence or you're not using discipline. Now you might say, "Oh, that's you full of it. That's dumb. Why would that's not how that works. I got 5 kids. I don't care if you got all the kids in the planet. If you do not use consequences, negative consequences, discipline, when your child uses inappropriate behavior, you setting a wrong pattern. And I ain't saying you gotta pull out no belt at the first go round. You know, if you got a 5-year-old and, you know, they playing at the table and they knock over, you know, a glass of milk and you done told them, you know, not to do that for a while, then you have to set a negative consequence. You have to use some type of discipline. So it can either be, you know, go to your room, go stand in a corner, clean up the milk. I wouldn't just pull out a belt and start beating they behind, because that's not showing the affection that needs to be shown. Now, it is a time to beat your child, but that should be your last resort, because you're doing a lot of talking and teaching and corrective actions that, you know, beating your child should be your last resort. So now let me get to this beating your child thing for a minute. So now some parents say, I'm sorry, that I can't even beat my child because I'll go to jail, you know, according to the law. That's a half truth. Stop listening to what everybody else is telling you, including me. So look it up. What the law says is that you cannot beat your child with a foreign object, like a 2x4, a broom, a pan, an extension cord, something like that. And the marks, and if you do beat your child, the marks cannot be visible. Like if you beat your child on the behind, like that's appropriate. If you punch your child in the face and they go to school with a black eye, then 9 times out of 10 you going to jail. So don't do that, because that's inappropriate. You're now abusing your child. That's not discipline at all. That's abuse. So you can, you know, take little Johnny pants down with his behind, sit on the bed, go on with your day. You can be Joe Jackson, tell Johnny to go outside and get a switch, and then beat him like he Coots Kente. You can't do that. That's abuse. Will DHS come to your house? Yes, they will. If you beat Johnny on the behind, Johnny go to school and tell the teacher, hey, you know, I got a beating from my mom or whatever like that, and it's not visible, then the teacher is not supposed to report that, because that's just regular discipline. You know what I mean? Now, if Johnny go to school and the teacher notices a whelp on Johnny's face, and you know, the teacher say, well, hey, Johnny, what happened to you? And then Johnny say, I got a beating last night. Then they mandated reporters. They have to report that. They have to report abuse, because that's a sign of abuse. And if you are a mandated reporter, you need to know the difference between a simple spanking on the behind versus abuse. A simple spanking on the behind is not discipline. I mean, it's not abuse. That's discipline. So if you one of them people that, oh, I'm about to call DHS because you beat your child on your behind, you need to mind your business, because that's not how that go. They can beat them with their hand. They can't beat them with a switch. Can't be an extension cord, 2x4, no stuff like that. You know what I mean? So let's move on. So, all right, I'm not sure if I talked about this one or not. So, teaching your child respect. Teaching respect, showing a child respect helps them grow into respectful individuals. Now, you have to be the person that's doing this, because it's your child. You can't, this isn't toward, I mean, it can be toward at school, but you can't get mad at Miss Thompson because she's not teaching your child respect. That's not Miss Thompson's job. It's your job. So I'm telling you right now that it's your job to teach your child respect. So, and I know what I'm talking about. So I have a master's degree in psychology, so I know, you know, the functions of human behavior, you know, how a child is supposed to be developed. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. So notice I'm not teaching about rocket science. So I don't know nothing about that. So um so teaching your child respect helps them grow into respectful individuals, and you can teach them to become people who think and act with positivity, and teach children that their opinions are valid, their emotions deserve attention, and by validating their ideas, we open up possibilities for them rather than them restricting their imagination. You have to acknowledge what your child is saying to you. Positive stuff. If you got a 3-year-old and they bring you your phone, because 9 times out of 10 your kid got your phone sometimes, and they say, "Look, mom, I took my picture," you have to make that into a big deal. If you just blow it off, or if you just snatch my phone and be like, "What you doing with my phone?" See, if you wasn't giving them the phone in the first place, they won't be used to doing it. So this is something that I just was teaching you. I mean, well, yeah, I was just teaching you. So the consequence of you giving your child your phone all the time when you just want them to be quiet is that in the back of their mind, they think that this is our phone. So it's like you share it with them. That's why, if you ever see like a toddler and the mom or the dad take the phone from the toddler freak out because he believes that's his phone also. That's their phone also. So no, don't you got do something else to keep that child occupied. But like I said, if they do take a picture on your phone, like pop, and they be like, hey, look at this. Don't y'all look at that. But make a big deal about it. They draw a picture, even when they become teenagers and they cook something for the first time, if they go driving, whatever, you have to let the child know. That's if it's good. Well, let me walk that back. When they're younger, the pictures, you may not think it may not be good, but you don't say that. You just say that's great. So that's what you want to say. That's great. Now, if you teaching your child to drive like I'm teaching my child to drive, which is a very interesting experience. If the child does not do well driving, you do not deter that child from driving by insulting how they drive, because they already nervous about this, the situation. So they want your affirmation. So they might have done bad. You say, well, hey, we're gonna work on this, so we can make it become better, and we can move from there. You know what I mean? Don't shoot the child down, because then you're gonna be hurting their feelings. So don't do that. So, let me see. Let's go on to the next one here. Oh, hold on. Where's the next one? All right, I must have forgot one. But anyway, all right. So teaching your child life skills. So what is life skills? Life skills, also known as psychosocial competences, are a set of interpersonal and psychosocial skills that help people deal with life challenges and demands. So you have to teach a child that. So let me say it one more time. Life skills, also known as psychosocial competencies, are a set of interpersonal and psychosocial skills that help people deal with life challenges and demands. So that's what that is. So let's look at this diagram I got right here. So pull this up here. So the top left, it says coping with emotions. Well, let's start with number one. Number one, problem solving. You want to teach your child how to problem solve, not just what 1 + 1 is, but how to get to what 1 + 1 is. Excuse me. Why is that? Why 1 + 1 = 2? Like I just said, understanding that if you take 1 from 2, it's going to equal 1. You know, you want to teach them how to solve problems. Like I said about the milk. If they spill the milk, you want to show them how to clean up the milk, what to do to prevent the milk from spilling, you know, things like that. Critical thinking. Let's use the milk again. If they done spilled the milk before and they go to the table, if they use critical thinking, they'll know to move the milk so it doesn't spill again. This is going to be very helpful when your child becomes a teenager and Johnny and them trying to convince him to go out and do something stupid, like, hey, let's go stand on the corner and smoke weed. No, because if you teach a child problem-solving skills and the critical thinking, they'll know that it's another, it's another path that they can take besides smoking weed. Now let's stay on the weed thing, because we're gonna go into number 3, which is effective communication skills. If your child's friend offers them to smoke weed, you should have had effective communication with your child to tell them the consequences of smoking marijuana. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to look it up, because it can have neurological consequences. It can set off certain behaviors. It's an array of things. So you want to look that up. So if you tell them, hey, if you smoke weed, you could do something crazy or, out of character, and you're going to be responsible for that. So, just try to stay away from, let me walk that back. Do not smoke weed. If you don't want your child not to do something, just say, do not do that. There ain't no time to be sugarcoating anything. Because as an adolescent, a toddler, adolescent, teenager, you give an instruction. Now, once they become an adult, that's when you give an advice, because they should be referring back to the instruction that you gave to apply that advice to it. Decision making. They got to know how to make decision making skills. It's this comedian. This guy's name is Ali Sadiq. Very funny comedian. He was talking about how he became a drug dealer. How he became a drug dealer was one of his friends, somebody in the neighborhood convinced him into, selling drugs. So Mr. Sadiq, at the time, he was 14. So, he let this person convince him that, selling drugs was the best route to go. He didn't have proper decision-making skills. These decision-making skills have to be set by the parent to teach your child how to make right or wrong decisions. And if you don't know how to do that, then you need to learn, because you have to teach your child how to do that. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just letting you know. And if you don't know what it is, or if you kind of shaky on it, like, I'm not really sure what that is, then you need to look it up. So let's go to the next one. Creative thinking. Your child has to be able to think creatively, about what type of activities they want to do, best ways to be artistic, like drawing, creating things like that. Coping with emotion. Now, this is a big one. Your child cannot just, how can I say, use negative emotion when they have been offended. And this happens, with a lot of folks. So, your child, say they got a sibling. So the sibling might have snatched their toy out their hand, and they 5. The child can't take the toy back and then knock the other kid upside their head with it. That's not coping with emotions. You got to teach your child how to do things responsibly so that, they don't get in trouble. Because if you don't teach your child how to do this at a young age, if you don't teach them to do this like at 5, at 25, they're going to be still doing the same thing. If they feelings hurt, they're going to try to knock somebody upside their head because that's what they used to. So you have to teach them this. And it's not going to be one conversation. So this could be multiple conversations. So it really depends on, let me draw this home. It really depends on how early you set this stuff up. Now, if you say, well, my mom taught me life skills one time when I was younger, God, just like that. You and your child are not the same person. So you can't expect for that to happen. For, your mom to tell you something and then boom, you just expect your child to do the same thing because of your child. And please, I know it's a lot of traits that children learn from us, but there's some traits that we don't learn from parents. And that could be one of them, learning how to, interpret information, take in information. So sometimes your teaching could be very repetitive. So coping with stress, if the child is stressful, you have to show the child positive outcomes in regards to handle that. Empathy. Your child has to know how to be empathetic towards other people. You know what I mean? Not to make fun of folks like little Johnny lost their dog or their cat or something like that. Your child shouldn't be unsensitive and start laughing at Johnny because they lost the cat. That don't go like that because they lost their pet. Self-awareness building skills. These skills, self-awareness, is skills that is going to help your child to be more aware of the person that they are, to gather their identity. I'm sorry, I got a bad sinuses right about that. So this is very important because if your child knows who they are as a person, then sometimes, 9 times out of 10, it's harder for other people to persuade them to do something else opposite of who the child is. And as you can see, these life skills are recommended by an organization called WHO. So you can look up this information again if you like. Interpersonal relationship skills. This is getting along with others. Your child has to know how to do that. How to get along with others, how to be respectful, things like that there. Your child should be very respectful to others, loving. They ain't necessarily got to be the life of the party, but they certainly shouldn't be the terror of the block in a 5 or 10. So let's go on to the next one. Oh, that's Charles Manson again. We ain't looking for that. Let me see. All right, the next one here. The importance of education. Now, I wasn't going to leave this one out. So here we go. Education for children is not just about academics, but personal and emotional development. So let me just pause right here. Well, give me 1 minute, please. Give me 1 second. So you can kind of look over that. All right, I'm back. So, education, personal and emotional development. So, this can happen in high school. It can very well happen in high school. It can happen further in a post-secondary education environment, depending on their career, depending on their major, things like that. So, according to the American Psychological Association, educated people, now this is beyond high school, are more likely to have higher self-esteem, confidence, a sense of purpose, which are all essential for lifetime happiness. So let me explain why this is. So you going to work, you go to Wawa, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, whatever's open at that time that you're going to work. Soon as you get to the deli or the register, somebody is there with an attitude because they got to do their job. Now, it could be a high school student, but at that time of morning, it's more likely an adult or somebody out of high school. So I'm not going to say that, they're, well, yeah, because it according to this this information, higher education, educated people will have a more lifetime of happiness. Will be more likely will have a lifetime of happiness. So the reason why the person at McDonald's could be snappy is because they don't like their job. Now, due to the type of education that they have, McDonald's might have been the best they can get because they don't have enough skills to do something else in another realm. Now, if they would have went the extra mile, trade school, college, university, and, started investing in their career, then I'm not going to say they might not be cranky at that career site at that time in the morning, because they might be. But the chances of it being a very repeated behavior are very slim to none. Because there will be more fulfillment in the career that they're actually working in, that they went to school for and chose on their own merit. Now, don't get me wrong. Something can happen at the job, because something happened at job. Things happen at jobs, where somebody might have pissed them off or whatever like that. But see, when we go back to all the development stuff, you teaching that person how to handle those attributes, or how to handle those feelings, how to cope with their feelings, how to cope with their stress, things like that. That's your job as a parent. Now you say, well, that sounds like something a therapist do. You the therapist. You are the therapist. I think that's it. Let me see. So the reason why I did this podcast is, like I said, our children, Black children, are the targets. I don't want to say targets, are more susceptible of being the ones that's going to jail, committing murder, and being involved in crime. And yes, it is in the inner city. It's whites, it's Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, Asians. But it's our kids that's more susceptible of doing criminal activity. That's in the inner city. I'm not going to say it don't happen in the suburbs because it does. And I'm not saying it don't happen in other races because it does also. But we have to, as a Black community, know the proper development of our children. And just because Big Mama or your mom or Uncle Leroy or Aunt Sylvia or whoever, Pastor Jimmy or whoever like that, they raised you up and you became the person that you are, that doesn't mean that those same attributes are going to apply to that child. Because you're different people. You know what I mean? I had somebody telling me the other day, well, I told so-and-so not to do this like so many times and they still did. That's why I said the relationship between the child and the parent is very important. Maybe they don't respect you enough to listen to what you're saying. And that's deep. Because if your child don't respect you as a parent, then that's rough. Maybe your child may be mad at you about something that you did, or maybe they may be mad because the other parent ain't in the household. In the Black community, it's a unfortunate decline of Black dads in the household. Well, involved with children the right way. So the child could be upset about that. You have to figure out what's bothering your child so you can get that fixed, and then you guys can move on with a more positive relationship. The development of the child, proper development of your child, is going to be the decision maker between your child being 6 feet under in somebody's prison or pursuing their career, graduating from college, becoming a partner at a law firm, becoming a scientist, getting involved in politics, doing a podcast, whatever. It's all dependent upon you. From birth to they get out there in the world on their own. Excuse me. And just because your child is 18, they are not fully prepared to go out there and take on the world by themselves because they're 18. It's a lot of training that has to be done, like which I just went over, prior to that person to qualify to be an adult. Because this ain't Mario Brothers. It ain't like you just finish stage 1 and you just automatically go to stage 2. Even with Mario Brothers, you can't even do that. Because you got to have a skill set to get past stage 1 to qualify to get to stage 2. Because if you can't jump the little ramp, the jump on the pole, to pull down the flag, then obviously you ain't good enough at stage 1 to go to stage 2. So it's our job as parents to take these kids through the proper stages that they need to be properly developed, to be substantial adults, to have a successful future in society. And yes, you are responsible a smidgen. I say probably like 5%. If your child become partner at a law firm, your 5% went with that. From your development. The 5% is your development, the development. Now, you wasn't doing all the work and doing all the casework and stuff like that. No, you wasn't that. Your child go to jail for murder. You ain't pull the trigger, but your development set that path. That's if you gave bad development. Now, if you gave good development, then and the child still did that, because that does happen, then you could say, I raised him or her the best way I could, and sometimes things happen. But see, that's just a small likelihood. You just heard what I was reading about Kathleen's son, Charles Manson. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Please excuse my cold. Science is kicking my behind. I gotta go. You guys have a wonderful night. You know I love y'all. Stay encouraged and God bless.